I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here, Clay. Look, I'm just going to start by saying this has by far been the most boring presidential campaign I have ever seen in my life. And so the occasional times where we get news, I am thrilled to discuss
It is interesting. Cotton to Congress. That's the name I call him because he
them.
likes to tell us that he went from cotton to Congress, cotton to Congress, cotton to Congress. Because if he can do it, if his family can do it, then so can you. He has dropped out of the GOP presidential race just days after debuting his girlfriend, Mindy.
Yes. I think it was Missy. Was it Missy? I thought it was Missy.
It was Mindy.
Oh, Mindy. Okay. There we
Yeah.
go.
Just days after the GOP debate, he has dropped out. He's no longer running for president.
Yes.
Now, let me say this, Dr. Jason Johnson. I've seen some narratives out there on various news networks talking about that Senator Tim Scott, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the optimism. He was optimistic. He had a sunny campaign, right? And I'm thinking, are we talking about the same person who launched his campaign at Fort Sumter, where the Confederacy launched the Civil War? That's the optimism? Are we talking about the guy that's made Jim Crow lies about the Great Society? I mean, literally, I did a whole show on it. Explicit Jim Crow lies about the Great Society. The guy who uses language like victimhood, the coded anti-black language, victimhood and welfare and stop being a victim and blah, 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 blah. This is the guy. This is your optimism in the GOP? This is the guy that shines with sunny optimism? Really? I guess he's not as ratchet as, Ramaswamy, but this is it. It's just so interesting to me. But he's out.
Clay, this is the thing. First off, Tim Scott was never really in. It's not one of those like they take me out and they put. He was never really in, right? And we'll go from the micro to the macro. I cannot help but laugh. It absolutely cracks me up that for 8 to 10 months of this man's presidential campaign, he essentially garnered no interest in his policies, no interest in his perspective on America, no interest in his perceived leadership style. The only thing people cared about is the fact that he was essentially doing the presidential level version of my girlfriend goes to another school. Okay, like that's all anybody cared about. Where's your girl? You better bring her to homecoming on Monday. We're going to clown you. It was all my girlfriend goes to another school. Everybody wanted to ask questions about who Tim Scott was dating, who he'd be at, where he dressed at, et cetera, right? That's all people cared about, which was indicative of how little interest there was in him. Herman Cain garnered more legitimate interest, okay, than Tim Scott. And I don't think this is a coincidence. I think I texted this to you. And then, interestingly enough, after we've never seen the significant other of his, and after he's done interviews where he said, hey, donors are asking, journalists are asking me, miraculously, 24 hours after the writer's strike, he shows up with a white woman. Right after the actor's strike ended, suddenly he has someone that he can bring, and then proceeds. We're in a fascinating place about race and politics in America, where the way to appease your right-wing conservative donors as a black man to, let's be honest, disabuse people of the notion that you might be gay, right, is to bring out a white woman who then apparently didn't do her job because 4 days later, those very same donors who told you, we need to see your girlfriend, turned around and told him, we need to see you drop out. It is a shameful example of the absolute clown show that we're observing right now, because this is not an actual primary. This is a coronation process for the Republican organization, which is no longer a political party. It is a religious cult dedicated to terrorism and the reinstallation of Donald Trump as dictator for life.
A couple things. One, one interesting moment of his failed presidential campaign, which I really think it's a run to be the VP pick. I've always said that he wants to be the VP pick. You know, Trump. I think he's the only person that Trump did not insult. Out of all the candidates up there, he's the only one that Trump didn't insult. So I think he wants to be that VP pick. What was interesting is that when they were grilling him allegedly on where's your girlfriend? Are you evangelical? Where's your girl? He said this quote that it sounds like we're living in 1963 and not 2023. So now Timothy wants to go to race. Right. Now Timothy is being the victim, Dr. Jason Johnson.
Yeah.
Now he's the victim. The playbook is, it's always on time. Oh, yeah. That they complain about the liberal, black, progressive people just running their mouths. And now you go. Nobody said anything about race, Timmy. No. Nobody said that. The donors wanted to know, do you got a girl? I mean, let's be fair. Cory Booker got some of the same critiques as well.
Yes, he did.
You know, you're single. And the truth is, Dr. Jason Johnson, if you want to be policy-wise in the bedrooms of LGBT people, in the doctor's offices of women, then now your personal life is up to be critiqued, Timmy. It's up.
Look, there is nothing more entertaining to me, and let's just be 100% candid about this. All of this is in the framework of bigotry and sexism, because ultimately it doesn't matter who Tim Scott is partnered with. I don't care if he's with a man. I don't care if he's with a woman. I don't care if he's with someone who's transitioning. But the fact that we have to pretend that a candidate pandering to outward and subtle bigotry is strategic, as opposed to a shameful example as to what our public discourse is part of the problem here. And by the way, no one's asked Lindsey Graham who he took to prom. Let's just be clear about Lindsey Graham. No one asks him these questions anymore. So it's a testament to the sort of double standard and bigotry that we're all supposed to whisper at. Again, I'm like you. Hey, if you're going to be getting into other people's business, blah, 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 maybe your personal life comes under scrutiny. But the fact of the matter is, it shouldn't come under scrutiny from the standpoint of a Judeo-Christian perspective as to what is a correct relationship to have. It should come under scrutiny from the standpoint do you have a functional relationship such that you will be deriving these opinions from, right? Like, and you know, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, man. He didn't have a chance. And I don't think, I'll be honest with you, Clay, he said, at least the quote that I read, he said he's not interested in being vice president. He says he's not interested. I don't know if I believe that, but that's what he claims right now.
And also, you know how the GOP is. They only select black folks when it's in reaction to. So they want a black person on that stage, on the one VP debate they'll have to be up against Vice President Kamala Harris. They're all about tokenism. They're all about it. And it doesn't really do well for them. But here's the most, one of the most devilish things about Trump. One of the worst things about Trump is that he manages, not to me, but to other people, to make Republicanism before him look like it was normal.
Right.
Tim Scott was insidious before Trump. Mitch McConnell was insidious before Trump. Ronald Reagan was insidious. Richard Nixon was insidious, and he should have never gotten that pardon from Ford. But what Trump does, he's such the bottom of the barrel that they act like Tim Scott was a George W. Bush Republican who was horrific, who destroyed our economy, an economy that Obama had to clean up, right? That's what he does, is that they really want to have us believe this revisionist history, that this was a viable, functioning party before Trump. Trump just effed it all up. Trump is the hate they created. And that's why it's so terrible that you have Tim Scott in South Carolina, only the third black Republican in history, who downplays racism, who says there is not a voter suppression issue, who downplays Frederick Douglass, Blanche Bruce. They were calling out racism in their own party. He is the personification. It's in my book, which you can pre-order now, The Grift, The Downward Spiral of Black Republicans from the Party of Lincoln to the Cult of Trump. How did black republicanism go from Frederick Douglass to Clarence Thomas? Go from Ida B. Wells to Tim Scott. How do we get here? They would be rolling in their graves at the performance, the audition Senator Tim Scott has been doing since before even running for president, but before that. He's auditioning. It's a performance.
Well, here's the thing. It would be a performance, Clay, if you ever had a chance to get on stage. That's what makes most of the sort of modern day African American Republicans seem silly to me, because it's like it never pays off. Like, it doesn't pay off for your long-term political goals, right? And I look at Tim Scott the same way that I look at Daniel Cameron in Kentucky,
right.
the same way that I look at Winsome Sears in Virginia, the same way that I looked at Ken Blackwell in 2006 in Ohio. There is a certain level that Republican voters, and remember, the Republicans are primarily the white American party at this point. They are the party of white people. They get the majority of the white vote. And that's just kind of been the case for 30 years now. But there is a certain height that African Americans seem to be able to get to in the Republican Party, and that's it. They'll talk about you as a VP pick. They'll talk about you as a potential shining star in the party, right? But it doesn't matter. You're never going to get past a statewide office. They're not going to do that for you, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're Herman Cain, who at one point was leading. They were never, Republicans in the primary were never going to make Herman Cain the president of the United States. It doesn't matter if you were Ken Blackwell in 2006. Hey, you're Secretary of State in Ohio. You've won statewide. You're a Bush Republican. He got curb stomped. You can be Daniel Cameron. Who's like, hey, I'm Mitch McConnell's mentee. I have Donald Trump endorsing me. I have provided a blood sacrifice to bigots in this country by basically throttling any attempt to get justice for Breonna Taylor. I have blood on my hands as an attorney general, and it still wasn't good enough. It still wasn't good enough for large numbers of white Republicans to put that man at the next level, because they knew if he became governor of Kentucky, that the next stop would be the presidency. And it's the same darn thing with Tim Scott. One of these days, one of these folks is going to recognize you have no future beyond your state level race. You have no future other than being used as a cudgel against blackness. You have no future other than to prostrate yourself, to literally drag your significant other out in order to appease bigots, and then still get smacked in the face. If I were Mindy, I'd be insulted. I'd be like, why did I come here?
But the other thing too,
like, you told me we were just going to go to dinner. I know you were going to take me out here and parade me on stage. Now you ain't even running for president no more. What am I doing this for? But then again, maybe her SAG card was up for expiration.
Right. But the other thing too, I don't know if their end game is political office. This may sound weird. I think the grift is very layered. For someone like Clarence Thomas, his end game was power.
Yes.
His end game was absolute power.
Mm-hmm.
I think for Colin Powell, I don't think he was a grifter, but he left the party. I mean, he was famously booed at the 2000 RNC for mentioning affirmative action. I think Condoleezza Rice, her end game is power, but she is brilliant. She is smart. She is qualified. But I think for someone like a Tim Scott or a Daniel Cameron, I think that they know they're not going to reach that level. They're just okay with the proximity to power, and they want that check.
Clay.
Let's not forget Tim Scott's fundraising records. They were above DeSantis over the summer. So I think they know their place. I think they know their place. I don't think it's for that ultimate power.
I vehemently disagree. I think these people drink their own Kool-Aid, even if from a dirty ladle. Look, you have to be a full believer in this nonsense to get this far, right? I literally said the same thing about Barack Obama. It's like Barack Obama had to have a ridiculously naive belief in the opportunities of America in order to convince enough people to get to where he was. You cannot be Daniel Cameron. You cannot be Tim Scott. You cannot be Herman Cain and not think, I am special. I am the one who will break through this ceiling. I am the one who can do me and only me. The only pathway forward is me. That is what Tim Scott believes. I alone can do it. That's what all these people believe. And they're shocked when it doesn't work, But then they try again. Arthur Davis. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I would say when it comes to Clarence Thomas, look, his motivation wasn't just power. His motivation was revenge. Clarence Thomas wanted to get back. I'm sure you listened to a brilliant series. You probably had Joel Anderson on his brilliant series about Clarence Thomas that was on Slate. I mean, that man was driven by an unyielding hatred for every sister who turned down his sexual harassment advances from 1978 to 1984. And his whole life was about getting revenge on those people. Tim Scott, honest goodness, believes on the blood of his ancestors that if he plays the game right, one day he will be the magical black person. And he's not going to be. And I promise you, Daniel Cameron believes the same. Yes, there are some full-fledged grifters out there, right? As per your book, I will invite you on my podcast to talk about it. There are some full-fledged grifters out there. Candace Owens is obviously a grifter, right? Her whole shtick was, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but now I'm going to be a Republican, blah, blah, blah. Diamond and Silk, they're grifters. Those two twins, Dan Bongino, who's not black, these people are all grifters, right? They are clearly just doing this for the money. But those in office? No. I think those guys believe. Vivek Ramaswamy is a grifter. That guy just wants a podcast.
Right, exactly. I want to, so this is a little part from my book. Again, you can pre-order it now, The Grift. So our former RNC chair, Michael Steele, I was so grateful. He did an interview with me.
He's great.
In the book. He's phenomenal. Baby. Ooh, the interview. Ooh, he was calling him out. It was so great.
Yeah.
But he said this about Tim Scott. This is in my book. He said, quote, "The fact that he is embracing Donald Trump and Trumpism, when you value your party more than your own conscience, your own community, they'll have to live with that. They'll have to live with that." And I just think that's a good way to put Senator Tim Scott. And I think, I hear you, Dr. Jason Johnson, but Tim Scott is set for life.
Yeah,
he's set for life.
Yes,
I think I don't know if it's about the power, and maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe he's like, okay, I might have a shot, but even if I don't, I'm still good because I am a foot soldier for white supremacy. They're going to take care of me for the rest of my life. I'm still good. So it could be somewhere in between as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Look, being a senator ain't a bad gig, right?
No, it's not.
And being a senator in a state where, for all practical purposes, you're going to get reelected forever, amen, right? So he doesn't really have anything to worry about. But I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that in order to wake up every single day and do that kind of dirty work, you have to believe somewhere in your soul that you're going to actually get rewarded for it. And I don't think anybody who is a senator feels that that is their last step. I will be curious, though. I wonder if he's going to. I wonder if we're going to find out that this is a legitimate relationship or this is a Charlie Crist situation. Like I said, those SAG cards expire.
Mindy. Well, listen. Do you think it's going to be the VP pick?
No. I think, and this is, and I want to make sure this is clear to everybody. When I talk about how this is a boring campaign season, I don't mean from the standpoint of, American politics isn't important. It's boring from the standpoint that there is no real competition, right? It's already known, we can't pretend that this is a competition. Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. It doesn't matter how old they are. Both organizations will weekend at Bernie's these men if they have to, fill their blood with Wakandan, juice extract if they've got to. These guys are going to end up being the nominees for both parties. There's not much competition. I don't think Trump's vice presidential pick really matters at this point. He could pick any random person. He could pick a celebrity because we're not in an election season where it's a competition between two parties. It's a competition between a semi-functioning political party, which is the Democrats, and a terrorist organization. They don't care who the VP pick is. I mean, 10 years ago, yes, the VP matters. Like, oh, hey, maybe you can carry their state. Donald Trump's going to carry South Carolina whether Tim Scott was on the ticket or not. Donald Trump's going to carry Indiana whether he wanted Bobby Knight or not. Remember, he thought of asking Bobby Knight at one point?
Yeah.
He was going to carry Indiana whether or not he had Mike Pence. He's not going to pick Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's Sarah Palin. She might get more attention than he does. So I don't think the vice presidential pick even really matters. And I don't think Trump or the current Republican Party cares enough about identity politics outside of white supremacy to even be that strategic. They could go pick a Latino man, because Trump's popularity with Latino men is growing, right, from 2016 to now. But guess what? He's still tapped out. I keep telling, I got to say this, Clay, because I think this is so important to the audience. I keep telling people, I am not worried as of right now about what's going to happen in 2024 because Trump has tapped out. The man didn't get the popular vote in 2016. He didn't get it in 2020, and he ain't going to get it in 2024. This is not a competition.
Think he can win. But Dr. Jason Johnson,
I think anything is possible.
Before.
I think anything is possible. But here's the thing. Here's what's never happened before. We ain't never had somebody run 3 times in a row, right? There's nothing new here. There's nothing for people to be like, I don't really know one way or another. Here's the other thing. Donald Trump has never had to run after 3 things. He ain't never had to run after January 6th. The man tried to start a terrorist attack to take over the country. Everybody's going to be reminded of that for 6 months. The man's never had to run after the Dobbs decision. He can't run away from the fact that Republicans want to force women to give birth, even to children that are a result of rape and incest. And he's never had to run before when he's going to be indicted and convicted of probably 2 crimes that even regular people can understand. Look, I know most people may see that this situation in New York is like, wait, he inflated the investments. Nobody cares about that. Everybody thinks rich people do that all the time. But the man had a stack of manila envelopes that said top secret in red and hid them in the bathroom. Everybody understands that. If you've seen, you could see one Mission Impossible movie and you know that the president ain't supposed to be taking stacks of papers and hiding it next to the Sherman. And when he gets convicted of one of these crimes, it's going to be yet another reminder next year of we can't have this guy back in office. It's going to be close because of voter suppression, but I don't think Donald Trump is going to win next year. I think he's in a weaker position now than he was in 2020.